We're going to start out with the TNT Forum about Field Day. Woo.
All right.
Leon's going to give us a good presentation. So Leon, take it away.
All right. So good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this shared here. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the TNT Forum. Doug Reese and I have put this presentation together kind of at the request of some of the new hams in the club, but also to since we're primarily, our assumption here with this presentation is that most of the VWS members for Field Day are going to be operating as either one Delta or one Echo stations. These are designations for home stations that either use commercial power or emergency power. And so the focus of this presentation is going to be on those operations. And we're going to talk about, since some people, I've seen some emails where members have said, gee, what's this Field Day thing and how does it work? I have no idea how to participate in Field Day. So we're going to drop down and cover some of those details in this presentation. I know for you old hands that this is going to be old news, but I think both Doug and I would appreciate if you have comments you want to add or you want to build on anything that we say in case we missed anything, again, to provide helpful information, particularly to the new members of the club. We'd appreciate that. So here we go. And let me just get on the right page here. Okay, so again, just to remind everybody, Field Day has several objectives. The main thing is to be able to set up a functioning amateur radio station in unusual and abnormal conditions, and then to work as many stations as you can on the good old-fashioned HF bands that are listed here. Although I just noticed a typo, it should be the 160 meter band, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. And then all bands above 50 megahertz, which is where our technician members can operate using voice if they have an interest. There's a segment of the 10 meter band where voice operation is allowed for you folks as well. It's going to be on June 27th to 28th, starting at 2 p.m. So that's Saturday afternoon, and it runs for 24 hours. And I'll just leave it at that. If you set up starting after the startup time, you can get an extra 3 hours of operating time if you want on the Sunday. So just throw that in so you know. And as I said earlier, our focus is going to be on operation of 1D and 1E stations. So the last time we talked about Field Day, I went through the whole list of categories of operation, and I've taken those out of this presentation so that we can focus on the one Delta and the one Echo stations. So let's just talk a little bit about entry categories. Categories for this Field Day are based on the maximum number of simultaneously transmitted signals in your group, and then a class designator indicating the nature of the station's participation. So if you have only one station operating at a time, the first part of your entry category is 1. If, let's say, you're operating from home and you decide to operate 2 transmitters simultaneously, then you would be a 2, and so forth. And then the class designator indicates the nature of your station. And what we mean by that is, well, the class designator then are the letters, the Delta and the Echo that we're talking about tonight. So a 1 Delta station, for example, are stations that are operating from a permanent or licensed station using commercial power. So if you have your home station or your vacation home station set up, it's all ready to go, and you fire it up using the commercial power, you would be a Delta station. And this year, Delta stations can make contacts with and score points from any of the other categories of stations that may be operating, A, B, C, D, E, and F Field Day stations. Normally that's not allowed, but this year, because there are so many groups that are operating without getting together, they've made that change in the rules for this year only. So that's 1 Delta. 1 Delta means you plug in your radio into the outlet on the wall, and that's how you power your station. There's also then the Class E, which is operating from home on emergency power. So it's pretty much the same as Class D, but you fire up your generator outside and plug your radio into that and operate for the duration of the contest using your generator off the commercial mains. And the Echo stations have always been and are able to count all Field Day contacts. Okay, so let me stop there and ask any questions about how you figure out what you are, 1D or 1E.
I have a quick comment about it, Leon.
Sure, go ahead, Gordon.
Just about the, I've seen people in the past set up as, say, for example, a 1D, and then they have another, like a fellow ham come over to their house and decide, oh, well, I'll go ahead and I'll run a second rig over here. We'll go ahead and be 2D or whatever. And you absolutely do not want to change your class and that you're telling other stations during the course of the contest. So if you start 1D or 1E, you should stay 1D or 1E.
Yeah, or otherwise, I suppose you would probably be obligated to submit as a two instead of a 1. But anyway,
Right. And every contact that you made in it or have been logged in on someone else's logs, or there's going to be a lot of discrepancies that way.
Yeah, it'll create a big mess. So once you get started, don't change. I think that's a fair point.
So is there a suggestion that if there's a chance that you might want to go to 2, you start off as 2, even though it might be half the day before you go there?
I think that would be good advice. Because again, if you start off with 1, and the point is if you start off with 1 and change in the middle of the road to 2, then it just creates a big logging mess.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. The maximum number of stations that you would perceive as having, you do that.
Is there a disadvantage to running as 2D, even though you never get around to putting on the second radio?
Yeah, I think so. Once you start telling people you're 2D, I think you need to stick with 2D.
If you run as 2 Delta, and right now everybody else is running as 1 Delta, you might be in a smaller class, so you have a higher chance of breaking the lead.
If you run as a highly active 1 Delta, or pretending to be 2 Delta.
Yeah.
If a friend comes over while you're on the air as they say a 1 Delta or a 1 Echo, then he's going to have to operate under his own call. He can operate at your location, but with his own call.
He could do that.
Yeah, you could do that also.
Yeah, he can operate under your call or his own, but if he operates under his own, he's his own station at that point.
Right.
Just as long as you don't increase the number of transmitters on your station under your call sign.
Yeah, that number is based on the number of transmitters that transmit simultaneously. All right.
I have a question, Leon.
Yep.
So let's say that I start operating as a 1D and I get exhausted, and the next thing I know, you come over and you operate my station, but I'm not operating at the same time. Are we still 1D, or have we just done something?
Oh, you're still 1D because you only have one simultaneously transmitting transmitter. If I come over to your house and you say, gee, jump on my other antenna, let's use both radios, then all of a sudden you become a 2.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, let's move on. If there's other questions, we'll chase those up in a minute. I've learned a lesson that if I ask for like one question, I'm going to get sick. So I'm going to keep going. Otherwise, we'll be here an hour. Okay, so for beginners, how to participate in field day. Already said that the objective here is to contact other stations, and then we've already sort of alluded to this in the discussion, correctly log specific information that's defined in the contest rules. So you're gonna, and the reason we've been talking about your designator is that's part of the information that that you're going to be exchanging. So we'll say more about that in just a second. And then another reminder here is that you need to operate according to FCC rules. So, and in particular, that means you need to be sure to operate in the band segments that your license class allows. So text, you need to look at where you can operate. If you want to operate on phone, there are certain bands you're limited to. And there's more opportunity for you to operate CW if you're able to operate CW in the contest. And of course, the general class and the extra class operators, you need to stick within your band allocations as well. So it's real important to remember that. And then there's 2 ways to make contacts. And Doug and I are going to do a little role play here in just a second to help explain this. There's what's known as search and pounce, which means that when you're operating search and pounce, you're tuning up and down the bands, looking for stations that are calling for contacts, calling CQ field day. And you work those stations as you move up and down. And then there's a mode of operation folks call run, which means that you find yourself a nice clear spot and you begin to call CQ field day and invite other stations to contact you and give your information. So again, I know this is old hat for you folks who participated a long time in field day, but what we want to do is just spend a minute to help folks who are new to field day appreciate how this works. So there's search and pounce. And as I said, you'll find that you'll tune up and down the bands and look for somebody calling CQ for field day. So Doug, why don't you go ahead and we'll simulate a contact here.
Okay, CQ field day, CQ field day, Alpha Kilo 4, Alpha Oscar, field day.
November Tango 8 Bravo.
November Tango 8 Bravo. Please copy 1 Echo, Virginia.
Thank you. Please copy 1 Delta, Michigan. Mike, India. QSL.
Thank you, and 73, AK4AO, field day.
Okay, so that's an example of me, NT8B, being the searcher and the pouncer. So I was tuning up and down the band, and I came across AK4AO calling CQ, and when he broke, I gave him a call, and we were able to make the exchange. So that's one approach that you can take. The next approach is called running, and we'll go through that one. And this time, I'll be the running station. And typically, again, as a matter of courtesy and manners, you start out by finding a clear frequency. So typically, you would go on and say, is the frequency in use? Is the frequency in use? Is this is NT8B. Okay, nothing heard. CQ field day, CQ field day, CQ field day. This is NT8B field day.
Alpha Kilo 4, Alpha Oscar.
AK4AO, please copy 1 Echo, Michigan. QSL.
Thank you. I am 1 Echo, Virginia.
Okay, thank you for the 1 Echo, Virginia. 73. QRZ from NT8B field day. And so that would be the exchange, and I would then listen for the next station to come along and just keep going for as long as I want it to go. And if there's no response, I'll just start calling field day again until I hear something, and then hopefully other stations will come along, other searchers and pouncers will come along, and we'll be able to make the QSOs. So, and then I found a nice YouTube video. I've copied the link here, and I'm going to circulate this presentation after the talk here tonight. There's a guy from a station down in Florida who participated in field day last year, and he does a pretty nice job of kind of going through what Doug and I just did, and you can get a better sense because he's on the air, and he gives you a good sense of what the sequence and the cadence sounds like whenever you're operating in field day. So let me pause there and again ask if there's any questions, particularly the new among us who might have any questions about how this works.
Just a comment, Leon.
Sorry, Doug, go ahead. Or Dean, sorry.
Yeah, it's Dean. So just for anybody that is a little overwhelmed by it, don't worry about it. Just get on the air, make your calls. If you mess up, the operator on the air will tell you what you're doing. It's a hobby, have fun. Don't be too overwhelmed by the rules. This is the whole point of field day weekend is to get on the air, make contacts, let people know what ham radio is all about. So don't be too overwhelmed by all of this.
Yeah, there are a ton of new operators on field day, and everybody's learning. There are some old hands who are out there, and you can kind of tell who they are. But if you're new, the best thing to do is just to jump in and do it because it's a lot of fun once you get rolling. Any other comments or questions? Okay. So again, we've already touched on the exchange. If you've been following this, you'll recognize what the exchange is. So there are these things called ARRL and or RAC, radio, this is the Radio Club of Canada sections. You already heard about a couple of sections. I use MI, which is the state of Michigan, as that's the ARRL designation for the state of Michigan. There are designations for all of the states, and then some of the states are broken into more than one region. So Texas, for example, there's North Texas and South Texas. Florida is broken up into several different sections. There's Eastern and Western Massachusetts. So there are so when you're copying the information, you need to listen for not only just the state, but which part of the state, depending on where the contact is being made. And there's a list that's available online of these sections, which again, I put the link here so that you can download a printable copy of the ARRL and Canadian section so that you can refer to them during the contest. For those of you who are in Virginia, again, if you're starting out, your section is Virginia, VA, Victor Alpha, and then Maryland and DC stations. All of you are in one section, which is known as MDC, Mike Delta Charlie. And so depending on where you're at, you'll want to use that. So if you're 1 Delta in Maryland, you'll use your call will be, you'll have your call sign, you'll be 1 Delta, and then your section will be MDC. And I've got some examples: 4 Alpha Virginia, 1 Delta North Texas, 4 Foxtrot Vermont, and so forth. So so that's how it works. It's also possible that you'll come across a DX station. So stations that are outside the US and Canada, their section is DX. So somebody may come back and say, we're 2 Alpha DX. And so you'll know that they're outside the US and Canada. And then all of these, I covered scoring in Field Day in a lot of detail in the other presentation. I'll have a little bit more to say about scoring, but you can see how these will score either in the ARRL rules and in just a second. Okay, so logging. As I said a little bit earlier, and again, as folks have mentioned in their comments, logging correctly is important because what happens is, particularly when folks are looking at who had the highest score in any given group, there's can be cross-checking between logs to make sure that the claim contacts line up. And so it's very important that when you make a contact, that you get the call sign right, you get the whole rest of the exchange correct. And there are several very good logging programs that are available. Some are free and some require payment. It turns out that within VWS, this is the only one we're going to talk about tonight, is a program called N1MM. And we use it in all of our events, particularly Field Day. And the reason we do is it has a number of advantages. It's free. It interfaces nicely with radios that have the capability of connecting to a computer. And it automates many procedures, including the creation of the files that you need to submit to the ARRL at the end of the contest. The cons associated with N1MM is that it's fairly complicated. Because it's so good, it is complicated, and it does have a fairly solid learning curve, but it's not, it's easily surmountable if you spend a little bit of time with it. And Doug, AK4AO, is going to provide some training via Zoom on June 20 and 21, and details for that will be available on the website and through some of the other communications we have. So let me stop there. Any questions at all about where we are with logging and some of the exchange information and so forth?
There are 9 separate sections in California.
That's true. Yeah, and they'll all be found in that link that I just mentioned. So, and it really is worth familiarizing yourself with these before Field Day, because you know, you'll hear East Bay and LAX and Santa Barbara and so forth, and you know, it will help to know what somebody's talking about when you come across.
Any more about the training on June 20 and 21st?
Doug's going to talk about that in a minute, so let's hang on for that one. Okay, all right, I'm going to move on. So scoring, the QSO points, the phone/voice contacts count 1 point, CW is 2, digital is 2 points. There are some multipliers that you can use. You get a 5x multiplier for using low power from sources other than the commercial or motor-driven generators. So solar-powered batteries and implements like that, you can really help drive up your score. And again, I'm not going to read the list here. They're fairly self-explanatory. And again, if you have questions, we'll be happy to address those. Now, another new thing that is that we're going to be able to do this year is because Field Day is going to be so dispersed among individual stations, the ARRL has again done a temporary rule change, and they will allow us to aggregate scores on behalf of a club like the Vienna Wireless Society. Now, here's something that's really important that Al Gordon pointed out at the beginning of the meeting tonight, and that is that we all have to agree to use the exact same wording when we submit our logs to the ARRL. And so what we would like everybody to use is to spell it out with no more spaces than what you see here: Vienna Wireless Society. Don't send in VWS, don't send in Vienna Wireless, don't send in anything else other than this exact wording, because they're going to run this through a computer algorithm, and if you misspell Vienna or you send something different, you won't be aggregated with the rest of the Vienna Wireless Society stations. So make sure that you're very precise when you fill in this field if you want your score to be aggregated with the rest of the group. And then ultimately the ARRL is going to report the scores for the individual stations, and ultimately a combined score will be delivered for VWS. And you know, if there's a lot of interest, we should roll up a pretty good score this year. Okay. All right. So in addition to making points by making contacts, there are some bonus activities that you can participate in. And so I'm going to hand it over to Doug, who's going to now talk about bonus points and how to go about doing that and how that ties into some of the training that he's going to be doing. So Doug, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Leon. Well, there are at least 350 bonus points that most of us should be able to get without too much work. And, you know, QSOs are 1 point or 2 points, so that's worth a lot of QSOs. So let me walk you through what some of these bonus opportunities are. The first one is to copy, and you will submit a electronic copy of the W1AW Field Day Bulletin. And the nice thing about that is that bulletin is transmitted several times. The first of those is Friday night before Field Day, so that is absolutely a great time to try to catch the bulletin without having to be distracted from your Field Day operations. And Leon has given you the set of times. You see it is sent in CW, phone, sideband, and several digital modes. I like to use FL Digi to copy it digitally, and then FL Digi gives me the transcript that I need to send in of the message. But you can copy it in any of those modes. It's the same in all the modes. There's no preference in terms of points for one over the other. Okay, well, let's go back to the previous one. So that's the W1AW bulletin. Everybody should try to copy that. 100 easy points. Okay, sending a message, and they use the words formal message, I'll talk about that in a minute, to the ARRL section manager or emergency coordinator. And on a subsequent slide, we've given you the contact information for the section manager. The rule is that it has to leave your station via RF, and it is supposed to be a formal message. And the rules don't define what a formal message is, but if you look at the Field Day package, at least the National Traffic System format or the ICS 213 format, those are both standards for transmitting messages. The NTS format is older. It's been used for so-called traffic nets for years. It's oriented, I would say, primarily towards CW or phone exchange of messages. And there are things in that format, like if you have a period in something, you say the word .dot rather than sending, you know, a period in Morse code or whatever. So there are a number of rules, but there's help to get your message formatted according to those rules. ICS is the Incident Control System. That is the standards that the government has established for handling emergency events. And any format with equivalent information is acceptable. The thing you have to submit for your messages in all cases is a copy of the message. And nobody is going to read the message through and look for you know, a missing comma or something. So if it is at least reasonably in a formal message kind of format, it should be fine. To the section manager, they say what has to be in the message. The club name, number of participants, and so on. You see that there. And we'll talk about Winlink in a moment, but you may have been to previous meetings where Winlink was described, and basically is a way of sending email over amateur radio. It normally interconnects with the internet, and the email that we all use. And in emergency situations, it is capable of working as a standalone RF only email exchange system. And we'll talk more on Winlink in a moment. But within the software, there is a template that helps you make either an NTS or an ICS 213 message that conforms with all the rules. Okay, the message to the section manager is 100 bonus points. So one message sent through RF. And by the way, sending through RF can be any of a number of ways. It can be inserted into a traffic net if you know how to do that. It can be sent via Winlink, or if you have a friend who can forward it, you can dictate it to them over RF. It can be 2 meter between your two handhelds if you want. It just has to leave your station via RF in order to get you the points. Okay, there's another opportunity for bonus points from messaging. That is 100 points maximum. And for this, you have to send, receive, or handle. So that person in the middle who heard it over 2 meter phone and put it into Winlink, he has handled and would get 10 points per message. There's a max of 100 points. You can send the message to anyone. The one to the section manager does not count, but anyone else, if you send, you receive, or you handle, it's 10 points apiece up to 100 points. So 10 messages, inbound, outbound, or in the middle, can all qualify. And I think we've covered some of the options for RF. Yeah, and the points. Okay, let's move on. If you are interested in Winlink, this would be a great time to get into it. Again, Winlink is the system for email over amateur radio. You can sign up for a free Winlink account at winlink.org, and that enables you to send and receive messages into the Winlink system. And the software that you can use to do that is called Winlink Express, and that is a free download. Winlink Express invites you to register it and pay a fee, but the program works whether or not you do that. Okay, so it's I've just gotten up on Winlink, and that's been a fun exercise. There's a bit of a learning curve, but now I think I'm up it. Brendan gave me a hand, and I helped Mike Imony get up on it, and he had a much lower learning curve than I did because, you know, I was able to help him avoid all of my missteps. Okay, let's move on to the field day training. As mentioned in a previous slide, I'm planning to offer training on the Saturday and the Sunday before field day. So that's not this coming weekend, but a week from tomorrow and a week from this coming Sunday. On the first day, Saturday, I'm going to show you how to set up N1MM Plus from scratch so that you can record your sideband and CW QSOs. So we'll start from the very beginning. I will walk you through all the steps and not require you to navigate the very lengthy manual. N1MM Plus is complicated because it does zillions of things. You probably don't have to do all of those things, and I will give you the short path to getting the basics up and going. Also, I've observed that people have some problems with things like, oh, I had a typo in my log, now what do I do? So I'll cover some of those basics of operating N1MM to try to get you up to speed on that. Okay, for field day, my experience last year anyway was that there were 3 modes that were popular: phone, CW, not surprisingly, and FT8 among the digital modes. Any digital mode that's legal is legal for field day. However, there last year were a blue zillion FT8 stations, and I really didn't see much of anything happening on some of the other digital modes like RIDI or PSK. So I wouldn't recommend that you bother setting up for those unless you're particularly interested in those. But FT8 is fun. It is a great field day mode, but it does require its own setup in N1MM. So if you want to get from 0 to FT8, you ought to come Saturday and learn the basics, and Sunday and learn the additional things for setting up WSJTX for FT8 and having it work together with N1MM. If you want to capture the digital or perhaps even the CW message electronically, FLDigi is a good software package. At this point, I don't have a specific plan to give training in FLDigi, but if there's interest in doing that, I'm really happy to help anyone either individually or we could have a Zoom on that. Let's see. And Leon, I think I'll turn it back to you for the informal field day discussion and so on.
Okay, very good.
What time your session is going to be?
2 p.m. both days.
So we will send out reminders of those trainings, and including it'll be done by Zoom, and we'll send out the links for that along with the time. So keep an eye on the general reflector, and then also again I have the link a little bit later in the presentation for the field day reflector as well. So we're going to recommend that folks keep their field day discussions on that reflector. But we'll make sure that these trainings are announced on the general reflector so that everyone is aware of them, okay?
Yeah, I'd also want to throw in that I absolutely want to help you if you have trouble with getting set up with either N1MM or FLDigi. So, you know, I'm happy to get your questions by phone or email or to Zoom with you or whatever it takes to get you going. We want everybody who wants to participate in field day to be able to do so.
Okay, so let me just finish with two other quick comments here, and then we're nearly to the end, Andrew. I know you're looking at the clock, but we're almost done here. So
yeah, we got a lot to cover for the business part.
Yeah, okay, so with regard to the informal discussion on Friday night, again, we're just going to set this up so that if folks have last-minute questions about getting ready for field day, we're going to open up a Zoom conference so that you can log in, and we'll just use the same coordinates that we do for the general meeting, and you can come here. And if there's interest and we have people who are willing, we'd like to set up a Winlink training as well. So if you have an interest in doing that training, let me know. And if you have doing it, I mean, what I mean by that is giving the training, we need an instructor. And then if you also have an interest in getting some training, just let us know. Okay, real quick, reporting the results, you've got to deliver your logs to the ARRL by the closing date. You get 50 points if you submit your results by web, or you can submit it using snail mail and other modalities, but they love the electronic submissions because it makes it a whole lot easier for them. So, and they reward you with the 50 bonus points. And then this is just a listing of links to where you can get information, our field day reflector, the ARRL field day website, the rules, et cetera, et cetera. So we put all of this here so that you can get this information just by clicking on these links. So that's the presentation tonight. I hope it's been helpful for all of you. I want to thank Doug for working with me to put this all together. And Andrew, I'll pass it back to you. You can decide whether or not you want to take any more time for questions. So thanks again, everyone.
Okay. Well, thank you, Leon and Doug. I think probably the best way to do questions at this point, both for time and so that other people can look at them. Post your questions in the comments. If it's a good question, maybe I'll consolidate them and send them out later with some answers, or Leon can maybe do that while the meeting's going on. I think it'd be good maybe just to collect all those questions for everybody here who's interested. So once again, thank you, Doug and Leon.